and welcome to Care Partner Q&A Mondays at the Inspired Memory Care Training, Education, and Resource Center at the 80th Street Residence. Hi, I'm Nettie Harper, and I'm here with
Gilligan.
And we're coming to you live from the Upper East Side of Manhattan.
We meet here at the 80th Street Residence with our team of professional and family care partners and with the folks who live here for focus groups, pilot testing, and feedback. It's our pleasure to present Care Partner Q&A Mondays as an initiative of the Training, Education, and Resource Center. Please, if you have a topic you're interested in discussing, feel free to type it into the comments section or email us at info@inspiredmemorycare.com.
Welcome to today's episode, Are You Exhausted and Unable to Rest? Dementia and Sleep Disruption. Let's go ahead and get started, Kelly. Here we go. So I think one of the first things that we need to talk about is a person experiencing sleep issues should actually have a very thorough medical exam. It will be important to identify any treatable illness that may be contributing to the problem. I think often what we hear, Kelly, is many people will be like, well, it's just their dementia. It's one of the symptoms of dementia. And what Kelly and I want to convey to you today is that there may be other reasons that are contributing to a person living with dementia and their sleep disruption. So one of the first ones that we think would be helpful for you to kind of take a look at and consult with your primary care physician or your geriatrician is one being depression. One of the signs and symptoms of depression in elders is sleep disturbances, difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep or oversleeping, or even that daytime sleepiness. So depression and dementia share many similar symptoms, so you don't want to assume it's one or the other. Check it out with the physician. Another area that is brought to Kelly and I's attention often is that we really should look into is sleep apnea, which is an abnormal breathing pattern in which people briefly stop breathing many times at night, resulting in poor quality sleep. And so often if you are working with an elder or you have a loved one that you're working with and they've had sleep apnea, just because now they've been diagnosed with some form of cognitive change doesn't mean that sleep apnea goes away. So the machine that they may have used at night for breathing, it doesn't mean that we stop using that. However, we also understand that your loved one may have a bit more distress using the machine. So I would say consult with your physician and see if there's a simpler machine. They've done a lot of work with these. They're smaller, they're more user-friendly. So certainly follow up if you do have a loved one who had been diagnosed with sleep apnea, because this could be what's contributing to the sleep disruption. Is there anything else here that you want to add, Kelly?
No, I think those are the two primary clinical concerns, and obviously the doctor will know how to screen for the others, so I think that's great.
Absolutely. Okay.
In addition to the clinical concerns, there are some basic, just physical causes of sleeplessness. As we review, please keep in mind that your loved one living with memory impairment may not always want to, there may be some embarrassment, or they may not be able to articulate what the physical needs are. So it's going to be really important to observe for them and anticipate them as much as possible to create minimized sleep disruption.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kelly.
So one of the most common issues that Nettie and I tend to troubleshoot, and we tend to think of this as an issue in facility living or community living, but it can certainly be an issue at home as well, hunger. And we're going to speak specifically about some of the foods that can be beneficial to sleep a little bit later on, and we'll also talk about the role of a dietitian. But the general idea of hunger is something that we should spend some time on. The evening tends to be a time of anxiety. It often tends to be a time of decreased concentration for people. They may have some cognitive fatigue because they've been focusing and acting and active all day long. And so they can become more overstimulated and exhausted at dinner time. Also, a lot of times what we see in the home, in the community, is People tend to have coverage earlier in the day to get their days started, and perhaps coverage is petering out a little bit more in the afternoon and evening. And so people may not have the prompt to eat their meals at nighttime because they simply might not have support. So it's important to understand that if a person's walking room to room or rummaging through cabinets at night or just generally experiencing a sleep disruption, look at nourishment. Look at what are they actually consuming at dinner time. And if they're not having a good quality meal at dinner, what are some creative ways that we can make sure that they get proper nourishment? So it might be something along the lines of encouraging foods that can be eaten with the fingers. If they're struggling to use utensils, it might be stationing bowls of snacks around the house with an invitation to participate in them. I know for some of the home attendants that we work with, they actually will leave a beautifully plated meal out for their care partner and a written invitation to enjoy today's dinner. I know it's your favorite. And so oftentimes that and possibly a phone call prompt can be really helpful to make sure that that person isn't going to bed hungry. Because I don't know about you, but when I go to bed hungry, I certainly am up in the middle of the night searching for things to eat. And they're not always the best things, and they don't always get ahead of the hunger I feel. And so I may get up multiple times looking for something to eat. And then of course, there's a whole cycle of you have something to eat, you need to use the bathroom. So it can certainly lead to disruption. All right. Also keep in mind for people who tend to pace and walk about frequently, they're burning calories. So they may need to ramp up the amount of food that they're eating throughout the day accordingly. And then another basic physical need that again kind of is not always so easy to meet and gets taken for granted is thirst. There are a lot of complications to maintaining good hydration for adults and in general, and also for people with cognitive change. Many of the medications that are used to treat older adults have dry mouth as a side effect. So we recommend reviewing the list, the med list with the doctor during that visit. High heat in the home or in the facility can cause dehydration, even in the winter time. And actually, I don't know about you, Nettie, but I frequently see people getting more dehydrated in the winter time than in the summertime, because in the summer, people are actively giving fluids, but in the winter, they're forgetting that there's that dry heat from the heaters. So we definitely want to encourage people to dress according to the temperature in the community and offer fluids accordingly. And then also visual issues can lead to difficulty with even seeing fluids. And then mobility issues can lead to difficulty with accessing them. So we encourage using brightly colored fluids or a cup that will draw the eye. For instance, on this slide, we have the Marilyn Monroe cup. And Marilyn Monroe is kind of fun. It's a little bit of a novelty. You can remind a person that their drink is there without actually reminding them by striking up a conversation about Marilyn. And so then that naturally kind of draws the eye to the fluids and promotes possibly a little bit of humor or a little bit of interaction that's positive. There's also the fear of having an incontinent episode, and that's a very real fear. And it's a very common fear, and that leads often to the avoidance of drinking fluids. So for people who are reluctant to drink fluids, period, you may need to use some creativity. There are puddings, yogurts, fruits that are high in fluid content, Jello, ice pops, shakes. I have a number of home attendants who are really fantastic about making smoothies and shakes for their clients. It feels a little bit less like it's going to lead to an incontinent episode, and it also can get in some really good nutrition. And so those are all different interventions that can support with hydration. And then since we are talking about sleep disruption, it is generally a good rule of thumb to limit fluids to sips a few hours before bedtime. But again, that's something you can certainly consult with a physician about.
So one of the other things is after you have addressed whether a person is hungry or thirsty, it will be important to assess for pain. Many of our clients have arthritis, they have stiffness, they have aches and contractures, and they're on what we call a PRN medication, which is as necessary or when needed. Oftentimes, what happens in these situations, though, is the client or your loved one doesn't receive the medication because they're unable to express that they are in pain verbally. So you might want to have a discussion with your physician to have what we call a standing order. So there's a certain time of the day on a regular basis that they would receive their pain medication. It's always been bizarre for Kelly and I to go in, we look at a chart, and we see PRN. It doesn't make sense in this time of day. We have a better understanding of dementia care, and pain is experienced by a lot of our clients and our loved ones. So we also understand that there is an issue with communication sometimes with our clients and loved ones. So why would we continue to do this PRN? But again, have that consultation with your physician so that you can have that open conversation on the reasoning behind it. Another source of pain is that many individuals we partner with, they actually have the inability to reposition while they're in bed asleep. So this may lead to your loved one to call out or have a restless night's sleep. So it's really important that we offer these individuals range of motion exercises. We would recommend at least once a day. In the perfect world, it would be at least twice a day. And then, so what you want to do is, if you haven't thought about range of motion exercises or exercises in general, this is an opportunity to, again, partner with your physician. You see, there's a lot of communication with your physician here, and sometimes they may not be thinking about these things. So it's really up to you to advocate for yourself. And I say yourself because if your loved one's not getting, the sleep that they need and deserve, you're also probably not getting that sleep, right? It's a partnership. So you've got to be an advocate for yourself and your loved one with the physician, because they might not be thinking of all of these possibilities to help with your loved one. So you want to advocate that maybe you get a physical therapy referral. The physical therapist can partner with you and your loved one on coming up with some range of motion exercises or simple exercises that you two can do on a daily basis. And you notice I say you two can do on a daily basis, because chances are you're so overwhelmed that you might not be getting the exercise that you need and deserve as well. Another thing that you may want to look at that we use, if this is the first episode that you've tuned into, then you may not know, but we always look to non-pharmacological interventions because there's less side effects. We do also understand that some of these things you do need medicine. So again, partner with your physician. But one of the things you may want to look into for pain is massage. So again, if there's a massage therapist that you can partner with, that might be a really wonderful opportunity to work out some of these pain situations. There are also some great lotions on the market that we've actually tested a lot with our clients, and we've done some focus groups over at the 80th Street Residence. And they actually prefer the Bath and Body Works aromatherapy line. There are some that are for sleep, and then there's some for energy. And so those are the ones that they actually picked were their favorite. But again, what are your loved ones' favorite? What do you like? What's the scent that you like? And see if, you can offer some hand massages and things like that. Because one of the best things is maybe having a hand massage together and partnering with that at night. And then that's your routine for night, and it signifies it's time to get ready for bed. And then some of the other things that pain is associated with some infections or other illnesses, urinary tract infections, pneumonia, constipation. I don't know, but when you're constipated, I imagine it's not feeling so good. So we're going to talk about a little bit about constipation related to food in just a few slides. The other thing is neuropathy. And so if you're feeling that, it may be some neuropathy pain, again, partner with your physician because there may be a medication. There's also restless leg syndrome and also temperature. Kelly, I don't know about you, but certainly when I go to sleep at night, my husband wants one temperature and I want another. If it is super cold in there, it's not happening. I'm not sleeping. So again, what temperature works for you and your loved one, and is it the same temperature or do you need different temperatures? And so how do you work through that? Also, as part of your consult, we actually recommend asking the physician to look closely at the timing of medications. Some may cause urination and or bowel issues when not received at the best hour of the day possible or at an optimal dose. So observing for and following up on signs and symptoms of infection, like frequent and urgent urination, can support problem-solving sleep issues and potential falls proactively as well. Another huge support to individuals living with memory impairment is simply making sure that they can find and navigate to find the bathroom when needed. So making sure that the environment supports that they can see, a direction, whether you have a night light that comes on when they start to stir, so that they can have clear signage to the bathroom and a clear pathway. And finally, creating a predictable routine, or as we call it, a rhythm of the day, can also help the body to normalize predictable toileting patterns. Let's face it, we all kind of have normal toileting patterns. So what is your loved one's normal toileting patterns? And we'll speak about this in a bit more depth in a moment. The other thing is, it's important to remember that a sudden drastic change in sleep patterns is not a normal part of aging. So a physician should be consulted if your loved one has experienced one.
So I mentioned during the slide about hunger that what we take in can have a really big impact on our sleep patterns. So let's take a closer look at that now. Before we get into foods that can help promote sleep, let's talk about a few items to avoid. And some of these may seem like common sense, but if you're really, really looking at your loved one's routine, you may be surprised at how often we are using coffee or chocolate or sugary substances to kind of give a snack or give our love, and it's kind of a way of nurturing. However, it can have detrimental side effects to do that too late in the day. So 4 hours before bed, we really recommend that you avoid offering chocolate, coffee, and even decaf coffee, and black or green tea, because these items all have high caffeine contents, and some items also are high in sugar, which kind of is a double whammy. We'll talk more about that. And then part of the rationale behind that is these can actually change the hormones that are in the body and activate the brain, and they activate your metabolism. And so if we're talking about how everything comes together between going to the bathroom and sleep and getting restful sleep, we really want to avoid things that are going to activate us hormonally. And then I mentioned sugar. A huge culprit of insomnia is sugar. There is actually a study that was done with Boston University School of Medicine, and they found that there's a direct correlation between the average number of hours slept and people's blood sugar levels. So people who slept 6 hours tended to have very high blood sugar levels, whereas those who slept a full 8 hours tended to have lower blood sugar levels. Unstable blood sugar, just like caffeine, can compromise quality sleep, and it can activate the metabolic system, and it can change the hormones in the body. And then poor sleep actually changes how your body metabolizes sugar. And so it becomes a vicious cycle. If you've gotten a poor night's sleep, the next day you tend to crave more junk food, and then your body can't metabolize it the same way. And so it becomes kind of this bad circle that happens. So really limiting snacking, and especially snacking on sugary snacks, is important.
Some other items for consideration: if the meal being served is high fat, like burgers and fries, this might be contributing to the sleep issue. A heavy meal may activate digestion, which can lead to nighttime bathroom needs, as I mentioned earlier. Also, those of you who are cooking spicy foods for your loved one because they've always loved spicy foods, it can actually lead to some heartburn. Maybe it didn't in the past, but it might be contributing now. So and I'm not saying take away the spicy foods. We would never say take away their favorite foods. But you might want to consider serving the spicy foods for a meal option during the day rather than later in the evening. So, and then for dinner, serving something lighter. And key to all food is keep snacks small at night, or you run the risk of your loved one being uncomfortable, therefore causing those, kind of sleep issues at night, and kind of stirring and maybe getting up and doing that pacing, as Kelly had mentioned earlier as well.
So now that we've told you what you can't eat, or what your loved one can eat, let's talk about what are some substitutions that we can make that will actually help promote sleep. Dairy foods contain tryptophan, and tryptophan is the same kind of chemical that is in your turkey that you eat on Thanksgiving when everybody is ready to take a good nap after Thanksgiving dinner. Tryptophan triggers the production of melatonin, which is a sleep trigger, and it's a non-farm way of triggering melatonin by consuming tryptophan, and particularly in combination with calcium. So dairy foods are great because they serve that double whammy of providing the tryptophan and the calcium that's needed to convert the tryptophan. Nuts, seeds, and bananas, honey, eggs, and turkey all have tryptophan in them. And so right there you have some natural sugars, right, in some of the fruits that are being offered, the bananas certainly, and the honey. And then you also have the calcium and the tryptophan from the dairy. So if you really have a loved one who has a sweet tooth, we are not saying that you need to take away everybody's sugar and everybody's kind of like happy foods. That's not what we're saying here. Good quality sugars from fruits and honey, and then the dairy in the cheese or yogurt make a great snack.
There's also a study from the European Journal of Medicine that found plant foods like whole grains provide complex carbohydrates, producing a slow, steady rise in insulin, which helps tryptophan to enter the brain and trigger the production of serotonin. Regular consumption of whole grains can help to regulate the production of this feel-good compound that is essential to sleeping well. So you may just want to consider adding some whole grains into the diet as well. Another food recommended for a nighttime snack is hummus. Not only is it rich in tryptophan, but also in folate and vitamin B6. Folate helps to regulate sleep patterns, especially in elders, and vitamin B6 helps to regulate your body clock. So spread some hummus on a small slice of bread for your loved one before a bed snack. Another research team also found that those participants who received tart cherry juice napped less, slept longer, and spent more of their time in bed asleep. The participants in the study who received a placebo drink had no change in their sleep habits. So you may want to look at some tart cherry juice as well to add into your loved one's diet. In this particular study, they found that the group that was taking the tart cherry juice showed increased levels of melatonin, which is indicating that drinking this juice boosts the body's melatonin levels, which may explain how tart cherry juice helps with sleep. So again, maybe add that into your loved one's diet. Some more delicious foods, since we told you all the things, as Kelly mentioned, that you can't eat, that have been researched are peanut butter and bananas, and both contain tryptophan. Another food you may want to consider is pineapple. Researchers actually found that levels of a melatonin marker were raised by more than 266% after eating pineapples. So again, some really good fruits that you can eat.
Love pineapple. All right. So another area to look at is partnering to develop what we call a rhythm of the day. Everybody has natural patterns in their days and in their energy levels. And so it's important to look at how your loved one is expending energy throughout his or her routine. So take a minute to look at your routine and think about what it brings to you every day. You most likely have opportunities for challenge, socialization, rest, recovery, being out in the fresh air. And so all of these different neural networks in your brain are experiencing a stimulation, and all of your different muscle groups are experiencing stimulation in different ways. But your body has the energy to use, it knows when it needs to replenish energy, and you have that insight. So you do your best to expend it in a really balanced and mindful way. Our clients and our loved ones with cognitive change may not always have those same opportunities for experiencing socialization, for experiencing fresh air, for experiencing a sense of cognitive stimulation that's right at the right level and not too high and not too low where they're bored. Same thing with physical stimulation. And so it's really important to look at what are some opportunities to create balance in the routine and the rhythm. What are some experiences that they can have where they can feel successful but also challenged? And so we're going to kind of talk a little bit more about some experiences that you might want to integrate. Before we do that, we have a little video to share with you. And it gives some insight into how the human body responds at different periods of the day. All right, here we go.
Why do most people get sleepy in the afternoon? Why do they feel alert and energized around 10 in the morning? Well, there is something that guides how we feel throughout the day called the circadian rhythm. This is a rhythm that is naturally occurring and is built into the systems of the human body along with plants and animals. The term circadian rhythm was developed in the 1950s by a man named Franz Halberg, who derived the term from the Latin words circa, which means about, and diem, which means day. Therefore, the word literally translates into about a day rhythm. Even though the term is relatively modern, scientists have been aware of this rhythm for thousands of years. Both the Egyptians and the Greeks had some understanding of the circadian rhythm. There are several criteria that a biological circadian rhythm must follow. First, it must last around 24 hours. And second, the rhythm can be reset by exposure to light and heat. This phenomenon can be seen as we travel across time zones and get jet lag as our bodies slowly adapt to the new local time. Recently, it has been concluded that disruptions to our circadian rhythm can cause health problems. Chronic disruptions of the circadian rhythm has been shown to cause fatigue, insomnia, and is at times linked to obesity and diabetes. At this point, you might be wondering, what happens during this 24-hour cycle? What exactly happens during this rhythm? If you take a normal day and break it down from sunrise to sunrise, it may look something like this. In the morning time, our body experiences its sharpest rise in blood pressure and a reduction in the secretion of melatonin. These occurrences cause our bodies to feel awake. It has been recently discovered that enjoying a cup of coffee first thing might be counterproductive to your day. In fact, early in the morning, our bodies have the highest level of a hormone called cortisol, which makes us naturally feel more awake. The caffeine in coffee actually interferes with cortisol production. Your body makes less of it accordingly, and the body then relies more on the caffeine to feel awake. By this logic then, it is better to have a cup of joe in the early afternoon so that the body does not become as dependent on caffeine to feel alert. In the afternoon, our bodies have the best coordination, reaction time, cardiovascular efficiency, and muscular strength. This gives us an explanation as to why so many world records are broken in the late afternoon. In the evening time, our body temperature begins to increase along with the secretion of melatonin, signaling to our bodies that it's nighttime and it's time to go to sleep. We hit our deepest stage of sleep around 2 o'clock in the morning. Using this information is key to living a productive and happy life. After all, it's part of our nature, and the fight against nature is not easily won. Anyways, it's about 5 in the afternoon right now, so I'm going to go ahead and get ready for my afternoon run. Thank you for listening, and please click the button to subscribe.
Kelly, did you want to make any comments on coffee?
Use a cup right now. I'm highly dependent on it.
I think that's probably the most shocking thing ever that comes out of that video is telling people that coffee in the morning is not the best for their rhythm of the day. So
absolutely. He would be shunned in Italy. I feel like after 10 a.m. there.
All right, let's continue on.
All right. So with individuals living with cognitive change, there can obviously be damage to the brain that causes change in the circadian rhythms. You saw how many different hormones are involved. We have cortisol, we have melatonin, we have tryptophan, we have serotonin. And so there's also a process of taking in the light from the environment and creating those hormones. So there are many different neurological factors that go into a circadian rhythm, and those can be interrupted by damage during dementia. People living with dementia may also have difficulty contextualizing changes. I have difficulty contextualizing changes like daylight savings time, or when we fall back and it's suddenly getting dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. I'm ready for bed. But I have the cognitive awareness to realize that, okay, I need to continue working for at least a little while longer and you know, giving care to my child before I try to get into bed. Individuals that have cognitive change may not have that awareness. And so you may see a shift. They're looking at the environmental cues around them and having a little bit of sleep disruption as a result if they're going to sleep too early. So from a strengths-based perspective, we know that people living with cognitive change have procedural memory that stays intact for a really long time into their progression. And so that's the memory of how to do things and learning how to do things. According to studies, maintaining a consistent wake-up time each day was one of the most important factors in establishing a routine for an individual who is experiencing sleep disruption. If we can get people to wake up at a consistent time, that tends to normalize the entire rest of the day, and that's really crucial. For all individuals and for people who are living with symptoms of what's commonly referred to as sundowning, moderate intensity exercise was demonstrated to increase endorphins, ease arousal, and ease anxiety in the afternoons and depression, which we know that, right? We know exercise produces positive endorphins, but it also really helps with mood and with stabilizing sleep. Interestingly, many studies show that high intensity exercise increased arousal. And so people could experience this feeling of being wired, and that didn't necessarily help in normalizing the sleep cycle, right? Because when you're wired, it's much harder to come down from that feeling. And so what we know then is that moderate intensity exercises like going for a vigorous walk can be a great way to get the physical challenge that a person needs and also gets them the fresh air and helps to stabilize the sleep. That's really the most important takeaway from this slide, I think, is incorporating exercise and a consistent wake-up time. The other thing is, as Nettie mentioned, we can normalize people's toileting patterns. We can normalize their eating patterns by really maintaining that consistent routine. Without the routine, it doesn't all quite come together.
Thanks, Kelly. The other thing is you said incorporate exercise. I'm going on the rest side. Exercise also helps keep muscles, joints, and heart in good shape. We know this. It helps people have regular toilet and sleep habits, which Kelly just mentioned. However, many of you might be saying, my loved one never exercised and they would refuse. Well, that's okay, because for the sake of their health, we need to start slow. Okay, so even me and myself, you know, don't tell me I'm going to have to exercise and bring me to the gym 7 days a week, because it's never going to happen. The other thing is, Kelly mentioned too much exercise at once. It's not a good thing. We're going to cause some overexertion. We're going to cause soreness. We're going to really create some agitation. And so again, if you do have a loved one and really exercise hasn't been part of their life, you know, again, can you partner with a physical therapist to find just the right exercise? A couple of tips to keep in mind: a 10-minute mini workout may be the best for your loved one to start. But again, consult with your physical therapist, consult with the physician. What we have found when working with our clients, that exercise works really well if we call it manipulative, something that you can hold, all right? If they have something in their hand, we tend to use a lot of colorful scarves. The other thing that works really well are balls that we can toss back and forth. And then also, exercise to music. Who doesn't like a little music, right? It naturally starts movement. And then if you start moving to the music, they tend to also mirror you. So they will mimic your movements. So again, start off small. We don't want to go for these hour workouts because guess what? None of us are going to be doing this. All right. What we do want to do is this could be starting small, where we're just moving our limbs around. And again, really pull your team together, and part of that team should be the physician and also a physical therapist.
So another important consideration is kind of reducing stimulation in the evening. We've mentioned that people can experience overexertion. They may get to that stage of being, as we said, wired. It's important to kind of have the opportunity to decompress, and that process may take a little bit longer for your loved one than it does for you or me. Some ideas for supporting decompression. Aromatherapy is an option, and it's a fairly well-researched option at this point. Fragrances like lavender, vanilla, and jasmine have all been linked to comfort and a relaxation response. Nettie mentioned before that we enjoy using aromatherapy with many of our clients and our residents at the 80th Street residence. They really love lavender vanilla and lavender chamomile. Combining that aromatherapy with therapeutic massage, as was mentioned, can also be very effective, and just be sure to check with your loved one's doctor about that, about any precautions. And then finally, meditation. And I'm actually working with a gentleman right now who meditation and mindfulness training has helped a great deal in terms of quieting his anxiety and his mind in the evenings. So it could be scheduling a gentle stretch. It could be doing a bit of Tai Chi. It could be repeating a mantra, or doing a guided meditation together. There are a lot of different guided meditations right on YouTube that you can follow along with. And that's kind of a nice way to close the day and calm a racing mind. In a recent Harvard study, mindfulness meditation was found to be more effective for decreasing insomnia, fatigue, and depression than regular education about good sleep practices. So it definitely has some positive effects for people. It can create a very deep shift in the body. And what's nice about these types of activities in the evening is that you and your loved one can do them side by side. And so I know many of the care partners we work with are really, their minds are racing and then some, because there's just so much going on and so much to keep track of. And so enjoying an activity like that can be therapeutic, not just for your loved one, but for you as well. And really, there's no explanation needed on this slide. Just making sure to take that extra moment to encourage the use of the bathroom before bed. That's always key. And I mentioned earlier the role of light in the environment and how that can actually work with the circadian rhythms. So it's really crucial that the environmental cues that are available to our loved ones work in our favor. We've talked about all the ways that the cognitive change and the change of aging can counteract our sleep. So it's important to use the environment and leverage what we can in the environment to support it. Broad spectrum lighting and even light box therapy have been shown to help support alertness. It really depends on whether or not your loved one can participate in light box therapy at a therapeutic dose. There is a need to kind of sit in front of the light box. I believe it's in increments of 20 minutes. But it is an opportunity for supporting alertness. One of the most helpful things that I've found to support a person who's having trouble waking in the morning with their permission is to open the curtains, open the blinds, let the sunlight stream in for a period of time, and then reapproach. And oftentimes people need that extra light to help them become more alert and more awake in the mornings. But I always ask for permission before I do that, because you certainly don't want to start your day off on the wrong foot. Light box therapy can also be really helpful in the winter time when the days are shorter, especially if you're working with an individual who struggles with depression or doldrums. It kind of serves a double effect. And then a dark, quiet environment at night is really crucial unless the person has a fear of dark or had a trauma in the past. And that's where knowing his or her personal history comes in, and you certainly would have that insight. So Nettie's going to speak a little bit more about other environmental cues that we should be taking a look at as well. In the meantime, it might sound silly, but check the mattress. Mattresses that come with hospital beds are often very paper thin, they're uncomfortable. Sometimes people will invest in mattress covers if their loved ones are struggling with some incontinence. If you've ever laid down on one of those mattress covers, if it's one of the less expensive plastic ones, they rustle, they make a tremendous amount of noise, and so that can cause some irritation. Sometimes the sheets just need to be changed, and if the person's immobile and the sheets aren't totally smooth, wrinkles in the sheets can cause a lot of discomfort for someone who can't reposition. And old mattresses from home benefit from being changed over time. I was working with a lady once who had a spring that was sticking out of the middle of her mattress, and every night when she would go to sleep on it, we couldn't see the spring until she was laying down on it. And so none of us realized she was literally being poked in the back by a spring. And so she was opting to sleep on the floor, which was making everybody nuts. Nobody could understand why she was doing it, but it was her wisdom. That was her way of coping with the situation because she couldn't tell us that the spring was sticking. So really make sure that you're checking those things on a routine basis.
Some other things that are important to explore are, what is the client's nighttime routine? Has it been what will bring them comfort? And we've spoken a little bit about routine at this point, and you need to look at things that might cue them that it is the nighttime. And so I mentioned earlier in the episode about that hand massage. That may be the cue that, okay, we're preparing to, you know, have sleep, right? I also just want to mention that I think it's important that we understand that if you're getting reports, if you have a loved one who's living in a facility or a community, that they may be missing just having the comfort of sleeping with you for 37, 38 years. And so that shouldn't bring you guilt, but we should get creative around it. I know in particular, I was brought in on a consult with a woman who was screaming out at night and really was in a lot of distress. And so the team brought me in, and so I came in quite a few nights, and then I came in quite a few days, and it was like night and day, her personality and her emotion. And so what I did is I called the husband and said, if you could just bear with me on a few things, would you mind, do you use any cologne or aftershave? He said, yes. He was really hesitant on the phone. He's like, yes. And I was like, can you bring in both? And then I said, would you bring in one of your shirts? Then he was thinking I'm a little bit crazy, but he went with me. He brought them in the next day. And then I had a body pillow. And I, basically brought both scents to his wife and said, which do you prefer? And she picked actually the aftershave. And so once we got the aftershave, we actually put it on his shirt. And then that night I stayed with his wife and he went home. And I said, would you mind if I put this pillow here? And she said, yes, dear, it's totally fine. So I went ahead, I put the pillow there. I never said, this is your husband, you'll be comforted, because Kelly and I actually believe that we deal in truth. You can't always, I understand that, and you have to do what's best for your client and your loved one. But in this particular case, I wanted to do my best to deal in truth. So I just simply said, would you mind if I put this pillow here? She said, yes, dear. So I put the pillow there and simply kind of just hung out of her room. And what we found is that she started snuggling with the pillow. She needed a piece of her husband. And because she got that piece of her husband, she felt more relaxed. So we need to understand bonds that our husbands, our wives, our significant others really bring comfort to us and help us with our sleep. So We shouldn't feel guilty because we needed support that he couldn't take care of her at home. But what we can do is get creative around it. What we can't do is say, oh, it's their dementia, it's one of the symptoms. If we had done that, we would have missed the underlying reason of why she can't sleep. She was emotionally trying to reach and be a part of her husband's life and vice versa. So she was emotionally in distraught. So once we brought that connection back, she was sleeping better through the night. So again, we have to really look at what could be all of the underlying reasons of why somebody is not sleeping. And Kelly just mentioned it was a spring going up in the bed. So again, what are we looking at? Or are we just saying it's their dementia? So there's a couple of things here that we look at. One of the things I do want to bring up, because it's so often used, especially at home, people are using it, and it can be dangerous. But if you are going to use a side rail, keep in mind sometimes that causes more distress for an individual with cognitive change, because then it looks like, if you, from their perspective, lie in the bed and then look over, it looks like you're being caged in. So one of the things that Kelly and I often say to family care partners is, how can you make the side rail look less like a cage, less intimidating, less like you are being boxed in? So one of the things we use is we may go back to a body pillow. We put a wonderful pillowcase on it with a bunch of pictures of the family. So when they look over, they feel like, wow, this is okay. This is comforting. And it's also something they can engage with as well. The other things is, just be careful to kind of guard those rails, because people can get stuck in them, catch a limb in them. So we're not saying don't use them, but we're saying look at it from a safety perspective, look at it from an emotional perspective, okay? And I think, anything else you want to share on this slide, Kelly?
No, I think you pretty much captured everything.
Okay, great. And then we just kind of wanted to end with the following. Good night and sweet dreams. We certainly appreciate that you were joining us today. We hope you do stay inspired. And to connect with us, you can always visit our website at www.inspiredmemorycare.com. You can learn more about our on-demand program webinars. You can learn more about our subscription activity program, because keep in mind, the more active your loved one is during the day, the better they're going to sleep at night. So certainly if you're looking for some activity ideas, look up our activity programming. Also, we do have a certification program for any professionals that joined us today. You can certainly look online for that. And most of all, we certainly want to thank the 80th Street residents for always hosting our Training, Education, and Resource Center. And more importantly, we want to thank the residents who always share their ideas with us so that we can bring these episodes to you from a perspective of somebody living with dementia. That's where we get these ideas. They support us, and then we're able to share these ideas with you. And they're not afraid to share their opinions with us, that's for sure. Next week, we hope you join us at the same time, same place, different episode. And next week's episode, we have a special guest, and we're extremely excited to be partnering with her on actually having a premiere of her film later next month, which you'll be hearing more information about next week. And it's a documentary film, and it's entitled The Rest I Make Up. And the filmmaker will be joining us next week. Her name is Michelle Memren, and you don't want to miss this episode. Take care and stay inspired.
Bye, everyone.